Alright, welcome back to Honored Madman. We're here with another God of War lore video. This time we're going to be talking about what I consider the most profound moment in the game, specifically for God of War Ragnarok. Now I'm of course referring to the forging of the Draupnir spear, and that whole quest line and sequence. And basically just how it's a lot more significant than it might seem. So first off, both of Kratos' current weapons, the Leviathan Axe and the Blades of Chaos, weren't really made for him. The Leviathan Axe was forged for his wife, who only gave it to him upon her death, and the Chaos Blades were sort of forced upon him by Ares after he was swindled. So right off the bat, the Draupnir is significant just because it's the first weapon that was actually forged for Kratos. One of the main ingredients of its creation was literally Kratos' blood. It doesn't get any more personalized than that. And not only that, but it's a spear, which is the first weapon all Spartans are trained with. So it's also got a bit of cultural significance to Kratos. Since he misses olives so much, the spear probably reminds him of home. The spear itself, for me, became quickly my favorite weapon in the game. It's just too versatile. I mean, obviously most people are just doing the fist and poison armor build, but I had a lot of fun using the spear. In fact, once I had it unlocked and fully maxed out, I'd hardly use any of the other weapons. But this isn't about my personal preference. Let's get into why the forging was significant. So after Kratos visits the Norns, he learns that he has to kill Heimdall to save his son, but the only way to kill Heimdall is to attack him with a weapon that he won't be able to predict, to overload his senses, as Brok puts it. So to accomplish this task, the brothers Huldra decide to forge Draupnir into a weapon. Now Draupnir is a ring that once belonged to Odin, but was stolen back from the brothers, ungifted, if you will, since they were the ones who forged it for him in the first place. They basically kept it to use for materials due to its unique nature. You see, Draupnir had the peculiar ability to multiply itself. Specifically, every 9th night, 8 new rings drip from Draupnir, each one the same weight and size as the original. So this sort of never-ending renewable source of materials proved extremely valuable for these two dwarf brothers to make all their various armors and weapons over the years. But the brothers, Sindri in particular, is willing to part with Draupnir if it means that Atreus can be saved and Heimdall can be stopped. Brok also reminds them that, I think we have enough of the material. And sure enough, when we actually do see the chamber where Draupnir is kept when Sindri goes down to get it, it's an entire large chamber like what you'd think of when you're reading The Hobbit, Smaug's chamber, just full of Draupnir rings. So Sindri goes down there and fishes out the original Draupnir. It's tied to a rope, and then he comes back up the lift and he argues that he has to be the one to go forge Draupnir to go see this mysterious being known as the Lady. Now Sindri is extremely adamant that he is the one who must go see the Lady, but Kratos rebukes him. He's like, nope, I'd rather it be Brok. I like Brok more. Basically telling him, I don't really like you too much, Sindri. You help my son sneak out and run around behind my back, and Brok, he speaks plain. I like that. It even says so in Kratos' journal description for Brok. He genuinely considers the Blue Dwarf a friend. One of the few he's ever made across his many years as a god. Honestly, Kratos and Brok's friendship is one of the coolest part about Kratos' character development. I could do a whole video about how cool it is, but I'll just talk about it briefly here. When we first meet Brok in God of War 2018, Kratos is almost immediately annoyed by the swearing, vulgar dwarf. But after learning that Brok was one of the ones who forged his wife's axe and, seeing Brok's skill as a smith, he slowly begins to trust this blue dwarf. Although I do think that when Kratos truly recognized Brok was a friend, it was during the first game, during Atreus' sickness, when Brok is offering anything he can to help, help fix the boy. He's genuinely trying to help Kratos save his son, and I think Kratos really respected that and appreciated it. Another thing that Brok did that likely gained Kratos' begrudging respect was that anytime Faye was brought up, Brok refused to divulge any of her secrets or any of the knowledge he knew about her out of respect for her memory, saying he would do the same to Kratos if the roles were reversed. He also speaks really fondly of Faye and outwardly wonders what she saw in Kratos, which seems to have become a bit of a running joke between the two. But obviously across the game, Kratos slowly begins to prefer Brok over Sindri, and that much is evident by the beginning of Ragnarok. And as previously stated, the fact that Sindri helps Atreus sneak around behind Kratos' back probably doesn't endear him too well on the former god of war. But anyway, we've established that Kratos and Brok are pretty good friends by this point, and if anybody's going to forge Kratos a weapon, he'd rather it be Brok instead of Sindri. I think most of us would agree to that. So Brok, Freya, and Kratos all travel to Svartalfheim to head to the Forge, a mysterious place where the lady resides. Freya opts to stay behind to kill Einar Jarl while Brok and Kratos go ahead. On the way, they take a lift up to the forge, and while on the lift, Brok captures a little bit of the wind to be used in the forging of Draupnir. Now, to be specific, he's actually capturing the sound of the wind, because, as he puts it, Dwarven magic deals with the intangibles, the relationship between what you can touch and what you can't, as he continues. Now, he's not actually grabbing this wind for the forging, he's grabbing it as a gift for the lady, but I do believe it is used in the overall forging. Now, the use of the wind here is interesting because it is said that the primordial dwarves embodied the winds. Now, Kratos found this strange until he met Fafnir and his brothers, who had been turned into dragons through various curses, after which point he thought it at least probable. But as it appears, the dwarves have an innate relationship with the winds. Now, after they make their way to the forge and repair the lift that lets them go visit the lady, they descend. And this is where we learn why Sindri was so adamant about being the one who goes to see the lady, and why it can't be Brok. So when they go down there and they give the lady all of the ingredients they need, and she basically forges them the spear after getting a little bit of Kratos' blood to, help tie the piece together. But after the spear is forged and presented to him, he asks for her blessing because, as he mentioned earlier in the quest, she only gives her blessings to particularly exceptional pieces. However, she doesn't seem to recognize Brok at all or even acknowledge his existence, and she flutters off back into her pond, causing the blue dwarf to become visibly upset. But he also comes to the revelation that he died, and he says he knew it, so he always suspected he died, but he never could confirm it, and that Sindri has been lying to him about it this whole time. So a while back when the brothers were working on the Leviathan axe, Brok was bit by a spider because he had presumably killed one of the spider's kin. Now this spider was particularly poisonous, so the unfortunate dwarf quickly succumbed to his wound. But Sindri was determined to save his brother, so determined that he threw his brother's body in a cart and ran off to Alfheim. There he attempted to stop Brok's soul from sinking into the Lake of Souls and passing into Helheim. Now I can go into great detail here about how exactly Sindri went about doing all this because there's a pretty detailed account of it, but that's something you guys should check out for yourselves. It's actually pretty interesting. It involves Sindri using one of Brok's gloves, and that's why Brok only has the one glove. It's a pretty cool little bit of lore. So Sindri manages to save Brok, but forgets a key piece of his soul, the soul's direction, if you will. Now that specific missing part of his soul was the only part of the soul that the Lady of the Forge is able to see, basically rendering him invisible to her. It also happens to be the part of the soul that guides one to the afterlife, and when that's gone, the rest of the soul just kind of puffs out of existence, but more on that later. So when Brok came to, he was basically like, what happened? And Sindri's like, well, you're blue because, you work with too much raw materials without using adequate protection. He's pretty much just kept him in the dark about the fact that he died in this whole mission to the land of the elves to save him, as well as the trauma that Sindri likely experienced when he dove into the Lake of Souls to try and save him. That's why he's, for lack of a better term, so messed up. Now, upon realizing all of this, Brok is pretty much furious. There's some things a man just ought to know, and dying, is one of them. However, Kratos, in a rare moment of wanting to comfort a friend, tells Brok to bless the spear. And while he at first objects and says that it would be pointless, he eventually relents and gives this legendary spear his blessing. It's actually a pretty good one. It's one of my favorite moments in the game. Kratos now has a spear capable of killing a really annoying god that also happens to be blessed and forged by his best friend. And as much as I hate to admit it, none of this would have been possible if it wasn't for Sindri saving Brok. If Sindri had never saved Brok, Kratos would have never befriended the blue dwarf. He would have never taken him to the forge to meet the lady. there would have been no one to offer Kratos and Atreus a place to stay at Sindri's house. So while Sindri didn't necessarily play a part in the actual forging of Draupnir, it wouldn't have been possible without his actions. And perhaps if they had never begun forging that Leviathan axe for Faye, Brok would have never been bitten. But all of that stuff needed to happen. And the spear itself did exactly what it was made for, in fact probably better than anyone could have ever imagined. It effortlessly killed Heimdall, and was also fast enough to prevent Odin from escaping with the wooden mask after fatally stabbing Brok. Again, spoiler alert. But when Brok is unable to be revived by Freya's magic, it's those same actions of Sindri's that are responsible for Brok's unfortunate outcome. And that's one thing I like about this game, is that there was a cost for it all. There was a cause and effect. At least when it comes to the arc of the two Dwarven brothers. I guess we could blame it all on that spider that bit Brok in the first place, but still, if it wasn't for Brok, being saved by Sindri in the way that he was, a bunch of the main important events that happened in the first game and in Ragnarok itself would not have played out the way they played out. But unfortunately, everything has that cost, and this one was Brok's life. Although I will say, I think that his death makes the act of forging the spear and the spear itself that much more profoundly significant to Kratos and God of War as a whole. Cody Balrog has likened Brok to something of the Kratos family dog, and I think by that he just meant that everybody would feel an emotional gut punch upon his death. But it doesn't feel cheap like video game deaths so often can. It's one of the few deaths of a main character, a particularly fond character of mine, that I don't really have any problems with because it serves the story so well. And not just that, it bookends Brok's arc, it starts a new arc of anger for Sindri, a whole character change. And it does teach Atreus a valuable lesson that all of his actions do have consequences, and that the ones close to him can pay the price for his, mistakes sometimes. And while it is tragic that Brok will experience no afterlife and that his soul is pretty much snuffed out of existence forever, he will in fact live on through Draupnir, through Kratos, through Atreus, and even through Sindri and Lunda. And I know I've probably said this word too many times throughout this video, but I think it's very significant that Kratos ends the game with this spear that represents Sparta. His blood formed that red cloth that has the Kratos logo on it that adorns the Draupnir spear. It was forged by his closest friend who had also forged an axe for his wife Faye. It's imbued with the sounds of the winds of Svartalfheim, representing Kratos' close relationship with the dwarves. It's also a symbol of victory from his conquest against the Aesir gods. The very same Aesir gods that killed our dear friend Brok. I also thought it was pretty cool how the manifesting the spear in your hand looks a bit similar to how the dwarves snap in and out between realms. How it looks like they just sort of disappear between our eyes while leaving a few wind sort of effects. Just something I felt worth mentioning. But anyway, I've rambled on long enough. As always, I hope you guys found that video at least somewhat informative. If you liked it, please like it. If you disliked it, please dislike it. And if you would, please consider subscribing to me. That'd be pretty cool. I mean, I could always use more subscribers. It really helps my videos out. Because YouTube seems to be hell-bent on destroying any goodwill some creators might have had towards this site. But, I digress. Once again, sorry for the delays. It just keeps storming out here. It's a bit like that scene from Captain Ron. I'll see if I could throw that in real quick.
It's just a little squall. They come on you fast, and they leave you fast.
That's how it feels driving out here. And I mean, look, I imagine there's people who are watching this who are from much more rainier areas than I live. But you gotta understand, we don't get rain over here. We're perpetually in a drought. So when we see our roads flooding and the power's getting out and there's just endless rain, my backyard's filling up with water, it's something that's new, and it really is really annoying because it keeps messing with my my process, my creative process, if you will. But all right, I'm done whining. Let's have our outro, shall we? So I don't want to jinx myself again, but I'm pretty sure we're back to regularly scheduled broadcasting. I have a bunch of videos that are just right there, The Peacemaker one's been done for a year. I just need to fact check a couple things I say in it. And, the long-awaited Randy video is just about done. That should expect that this week or next week. It should be this week, or I guess next week now because we're at the end of the week. But I've also got a couple more God of War ones. Expect some Fallout stuff, Fallout 3 in New Vegas specifically. But I have an interesting theory about Bernal and Vike that I'm going to share with you guys at some point this week. But hopefully these storms can give me a little bit of a break. But with that being said, you guys have a good one. I will see you next time.
Ooh, that's brisk. Think I'll grab some for the lady.
Grab some what? The wind?
No, you idiot. The sound of the wind. Now, watch and learn. See? Dwarven magic's all about the intangibles. The relationship between the stuff what you can touch and what you can't. It's about understanding.
Understanding what?
The nature of a thing's more important than the form of a thing. What? No, I can't bless shit. I don't have all my soul bits. The blessing wouldn't mean squat.
It is the nature of a thing that matters, not its form.
All right. May this weapon strike true. May it be wielded with wisdom. May it be put down when its job is done.